Hi, I'm Caroline Weaver from Body and Soul Companion, and we are on week 28, day 4. And I'm trying to do the trials, the pre-dawn trials and denials before the sun comes up. And I'm trying to time it so that at Peter's denials, the dawn comes. It might come through the window, it might not. So I'm just trying to help you to imagine yourself in the scene, because all of this has been, the last few days have been done in darkness. So I invite you, and also we're in John 18:13 through 27, and Matthew 26:57 through 75. So I invite you to close your eyes and take a deep breath and settle into God's presence with your body and your mind, letting go of any tension in your muscles and anything that's preoccupying your mind. And as you look at God, receive His loving gaze. Lord, we pray that more of our day would be directed to your presence and your praise, leading to service. And Lord, we pray for the grace to feel sorrow with you and your sorrow as you go through these pre-dawn trials and Peter's denials. So the Roman cohort and the commander and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him and led him to Annas first, for he was father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. Now Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews that it was expedient for one man to die on behalf of the people. And Simon Peter was following Jesus, and so was another disciple. Now that disciple was known to the high priest and entered with Jesus into the court of the high priest. But Peter was standing at the door outside. So the other disciple who was known to the high priest went out and spoke to the doorkeeper and brought in Peter. The slave girl, therefore, who kept the door, said to Peter, "You are not also one of this man's disciples, are you?" He said, "I am not." Now the slaves and the officers were standing there, having made a charcoal fire, for it was cold, and they were warming themselves. And Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself. The high priest therefore questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching. Jesus answered him, "I have spoken openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where all the Jews come together, and I spoke nothing in secret. Why do you question me? Question those who have heard what I spoke to them. Behold, these know what I said." And when he had said this, one of the officers standing by gave Jesus a blow, saying, "Is that the way you answer the high priest?" Jesus answered him, "If I have spoken wrongly, bear witness of the wrong. But if rightly, why do you strike me?" Annas therefore sent him bound to Caiaphas the high priest. And those who had seized Jesus led him away to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were gathered together. But Peter also was following him at a distance. as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and entered in and sat down with officers to see the outcome. Now the chief priests and the whole council kept trying to obtain false testimony against Jesus, in order that they might put him to death. And they did not find any, even though many false witnesses came forward. But later on, two came forward and said, "This man stated, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days.'" And the high priest stood up and said to him, "Do you make no answer? What is it that these men are testifying against you?" But Jesus kept silent. And the high priest said to him, "I adjure you by the living God that you tell us whether you are the Christ, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You have said it yourself. Nevertheless, I tell you, hereafter you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Psalm 110:1 and Daniel 7:13. Then the high priest tore his robe, saying, "He has blasphemed! What further need do we have of witnesses? Behold, you have now heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" They answered and said, "He is deserving of death." Then they spat in his face and beat him with their fists, and others slapped him and said, "Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is the one who hit you?" And then now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a certain servant girl came to him and said, "You too were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you are talking about." And when he had gone out to the gateway, another servant girl saw him and said to those who were there, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." And a little later the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Surely you too are one of them, for the way you talk gives you away." Then he began to curse and swear, "I do not know the man." And immediately a cock crowed. And then I'll add in the John version, one of the slaves of the high priest, being a relative of the one whose ear Peter cut off, said, "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" Peter therefore denied it again, and immediately a cock crowed. So that last time was a relative of Malchus. And Peter remembered the word which Jesus had said, "Before a cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. So I just want you to sit with that reading. So Jesus has just been betrayed by one of his disciples, and now he's denied by another one. So just sit with that. And let's set the scene. So we don't know the exact route that Jesus' captors took from the Garden of Gethsemane to the house of the high priest. But it was likely that he was led through the Kidron Valley, around the Temple Mount, and through the sleeping city late at night, with Peter following at a distance. Although it was late at night, the city was crowded with pilgrims celebrating the Passover feast, so it's likely that not everyone was asleep. And again, as we've learned in our past contemplations, the moon would have been full because it was Passover, so the light of the moon would have guided him. And the courtyard in which Peter sat with the servants around a fire would have been the inner courtyard of the high priest's house. So those are all, and just think of the high priest's house as more opulent, because they had more money. So, who are you in this story? You might want to be Peter or John, and it says the one that followed inside was the other disciple, and it was probably John, because he wrote the book of John. And he never says it's him, but we know it's him. So just imagine Peter, if you are him, you're sticking to the shadows as you follow from a safe distance. Or you might be one of the servants who questions Peter. Or you might be one of the people taking Jesus to the high priest. So imagine the city at night. Jesus being led from the Garden of Gethsemane to the court of Annas. Look up at the moon. Hear the murmur of the people, the Passover people, going through the Kidron Valley, around the Temple Mount, to the father-in-law of Caiaphas. And see Simon Peter following in the shadows, and the other disciple who was known to the high priest, entering with Jesus into the court. And see Peter standing at the door outside. And then hear the other disciple talk to the doorkeeper and bringing Peter in. And hear the slave girl at the door say, "You are not also one of this man's disciples, are you?" And hear him say, "I am not." And see the officers and the slaves standing there around the charcoal fire because it was cold. And see Peter also standing there warming himself. And hear the question given to Jesus and his disciples and his teaching. And hear Jesus say, "I have spoken openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues and in the temple where all the Jews come together, and I spoke nothing in secret. Why do you question me? Question those who have heard what I spoke to them. Behold, these know what I said." And then see one of the officers give him a blow. Hear the blow. What do you feel? And hear him say, "Is that the way you answer the high priest?" And hear Jesus and look at his expression on his face. "If I've spoken wrongly, bear witness of the wrong, but if rightly, why do you strike me?" And then see Jesus bound and sent to Caiaphas, the high priest. And see the scribes and the elders and Caiaphas gathered together. Look at the expressions on their faces. Look at the expression on Jesus' face. And then see Peter in the courtyard of the high priest, following at a distance, sitting down with the officers to see the outcome. And then see the chief priests and the council looking around for false testimony, wanting to put him to death. Look at their faces. And then see two come forward saying, two false witnesses, this man stated, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days. And see Caiaphas stand up. What's the expression on his face? Haughty. Do you make no answer? What is it that these men are testifying against you? See the two men. What are the expressions on their faces? And then look at Jesus' face as he's silent. And hear the high priest say, I adjure you by the living God that you tell us whether you are the Christ, the Son of God. And hear Jesus say, you have said it yourself. Nevertheless, I tell you, hereafter you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. They would have known Daniel's prophecy. They would have known what's written in the Psalms. What's the expression on their face when they hear Jesus say that? And then look at the tearing of the robe of the high priest. Hear the tear and hear him say, he is blasphemed. What further need do we have of witness? Behold, you have now heard the blasphemy. What do you think? And hear the elders and the scribes say, he is deserving of death. And then hear the spit and hit Jesus' face. And look at the expression on Jesus' face as the spit hits his face. And hear the beats of the fists on Jesus' body and the slaps. And hear them say, prophesy to us, you Christ, who is the one who hit you? What's the expression on their faces? Oh, what is it? Try to discern, and then what are you feeling? Seeing him hit and slapped and spat upon. What do you feel? Now look at Peter, or maybe you're Peter, sitting outside in the courtyard. And then hear a servant girl by the fire say, you too were with Jesus the Galilean. And hear Jesus say, I do not know what you are talking about. What's the expression on Peter's face as he says that? Look at the people around him. Do they murmur? Do they disagree? What's the expression on the servant girl's face? And then he goes out to the gateway and encounters another servant girl. And hear her say to the other people there, look at the other people, this man was with Jesus of Nazareth. And again, hear him deny it with an oath. I do not know the man. Look at the expression on Peter's face. And look at the expression on the people in the servant girl's face. And then See the bystanders come up to Peter. So look at them. Look at them looking face to face. Surely you too are one of them, for the way you talk gives you away. And one of those slaves of the high priest, one of those people saying that, was a relative of one of those whose ear Peter cut off, Malchus, and said, "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" And then hear Peter curse, and look at the look on his face as he says and swears, "I do not know the man." And then hear the cock crow. What does it sound like? It's dawn. I timed it. Yep. The first light just came. Probably can't see it, but it did. Oh, sorry. And then Peter remembered the words which Jesus had said, "Before a cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And see Peter go out and hear his bitter weeping. I wanted you to see the first light of dawn. The cock has crowed. Continue to be with Jesus in the sea. And have a conversation with Jesus. And here are some questions for you. Have you ever denied Jesus? Talk to him about it. In the Luke 22 version, 22:61, Jesus turns and looks at Peter. So see Jesus turning and looking at you. How do you interpret the look that Jesus gave Peter? And if you've ever denied Jesus, the look he gives you. And then a third thing, have you ever been mocked, ridiculed, or reviled for your association with someone else? Or because you know Jesus? Reflect on that in your life history. If you've ever been mocked, ridiculed, or reviled for your association. It is dawn. The cock has crowed, but we are not without hope. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming. Be very blessed. Have a good colloquy conversation time with Jesus, and remember to listen to what he says to you. Be blessed.